Hi, it's Eric Daly of the Multiple Group, and here's what you need to know if you're a retirement plan sponsor for the week ended Friday, October the 10th of 2025. There was a lot of news around some work that the Center for Retirement Research at Georgetown University had done in conjunction with Willis Towers Watson about the potential impact of private equity on increasing retiree health and income in defined contribution plans. So I decided to dive into that particular paper because while I'm a big fan of the work that the Center for Retirement Research has done historically, this did seem to fall into the normal expectations of the things that they work on. So in looking at that particular paper, we did point out and identify some challenges ultimately with how they constructed this particular analysis. The first of which is that illiquidity is not the same as diversification. So while private equity does have meaningful liquidity restrictions and potentially illiquidity can come with an enhanced return, it's not the same as diversification. Private equity that's illiquid should not be expected to behave different than public equity, for instance, in recessionary environments. The recession would impact private equity the same way it would impact public equity. That's not really diversification. The illiquidity shows up as kind of a mathematical noise around diversification. The second, the one that I learned very, very early on in studying for the CFA exam, is that modeled returns are not investable returns. So using historic modeled returns, especially modeled returns from the CEM pitchbook data, which generally utilizes the best performing private equity historically and assuming that you're going to get those same returns prospectively, I think is just grossly inaccurate and could cause investors to make really bad decisions. The past behavior is not indicative of future expectations is still true in private equity, the same as it would be in any other asset class. The third is the data assumes kind of a frictionless implementation. If you're going to use private equity in a defined contribution setting, you're going to need things like cash buffers and liquidity sleeves to try and provide participants access to funds in a way that they would expect. That is not something that is going to enhance returns, it's going to reduce returns. Having to hold cash to be able to make these liquidity sleeves available or other things that might be required to implement private equity are all things that are going to be a tax on returns prospectively. The fourth, and I think it generally misunderstands participant behavior, especially with Secure 2.0 and the changes we've made to defined contribution plans. We have increasingly created a world and environment where defined contribution plans are being used to help fund emergency expenses. So all of these assumptions about future returns don't seem to realistically assess the leakage problems, the loan problems, the hardship problems that create liquidity drags earlier in the accumulation phase, and again, are not manageable within this glide path structure that was outlined by Willis Towers Watson and the CRC. And last, and maybe not least, is that the fiduciary and legal risks are unpriced. So adding these particular pieces are going to require more work by plan fiduciaries to demonstrate their fiduciary duty, their diligence as a result of this process. None of that is going to be uncompensated work. And because plans generally pay those expenses, meaning that plan participants pay those expenses, assuming you can add private equity and not incur additional accounting costs, fiduciary costs, legal costs in support of seeking that additional return, again, I think really misunderstands the reality of where the defined contribution marketplace is. Private equity has a role, both in creating liquidity for businesses, in organizing M&A activity. There is an important role for private equity. It is really unclear to me that there is an important role for private equity in defined contribution plans.